Kemi Bennings, I'm honored to be here as your moderator today. We're going to jump right in, but before we do, let's look at a little context before we get into the discussion. Let's talk about the event itself, cultural alchemy. And cultural alchemy is driven by genuine interactions. It's driven by exchange of ideas, collective aspirations, and access to experiences that lead to meaningful opportunities. That's driven by mission, driven by purpose, and that we are champions of a future world. So I just applaud, give it up for the visionary and founder, King Esseen. I'm going to go right into an introduction for him. He is the artistic visionary and cultural curator of cultural alchemy. He taps into all his authentic power of the arts, music, and fashion in his visual storytelling to bridge the gap between cultural history and creative innovation. His brand empowers creators to embrace their own authenticity, pushing the boundaries of art and culture to inspire a new generation of makers, thinkers, and influencers. Also joining me here on the stage is a mover and shaker, Jason Orr. He is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, marketing consultant, cultural curator, and a festival producer, most notably known for Funk Jazz Cafe and Arts and Music Festival, and Life Arts Documentary Film Festival, plus a music conference, as well as Maynard. If you've heard of Maynard, he's definitely a powerful producer in that. Stepping into Tomorrow, people have not seen it, but it's reverberating throughout the universe. What Jason has done with his film and his aspiration is truly remarkable. We're wonderfully happy to have him as an invited guest. Give it up for Jason Orr. Also joining on stage is one of our premier photojournalists here in Atlanta, hailing from Newark, New Jersey. John's father dabbled in photography and created his own dark room. John from Seton Hall, he came here to Morehouse College, and he's always loved history, and he's always loved underground movements that led him to Red Beans and Rice Records, which he got a lot of collaboration and inspiration to pick up the camera again. He was also a member of the Zulu Nation, where he and King Esseen met. And I'm so happy that he's here. He is also the photographer of the iconic photograph of Great Day in Atlanta. He has captured movement from the late 80s all the way to present. You could see him everywhere. Even before we had technology, John was having duplicate pictures, and he would give them to you along the way. If you have those in your collection, Jason, you know we got some. That is really iconic at this point. Please put your hands together for Mr. John Crooms. So I am so excited always to talk about the Atlanta ecosystem and what was created back in the day. I want to start with Jason, who's a native Atlantan, and talk a little bit about coming to Atlanta and the spark for you, not only that you were coming with something different, but what was that pivotal point, even in your youth, to know like, I gotta do something different. Tell us a little about the landscape and tell us about your shift.
First of all, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Steve. So really, prior to what I call the Atlanta Renaissance in the early 90s, Atlanta was a city of, it still is, of almost everybody in every apartment is highly creative at something, right? And for those that know me, I actually did a music festival for a quarter of a century with artists who didn't announce talent. And that's how confident I felt about this cultural arts community here in Atlanta, that not only just in music and live performance and instrument playing, you know, they were pattern makers in fashion, and they were, you know, metal sculptors, and all kind of things that would bring international attention to the city. If people knew about the high level of creative artists that was, you know, living here. And that was the beginning of Funk Dad Cafe, in the sense of, let me create a creative hub that everything exists under this umbrella, you know. But it's always been a creative place, you know. As a teenager, we might have had like 3 or 4 teen clubs. One of them in Six Flags. It was so popular that teens like to party like this, you know what I mean? So for us, by the time we were adults, you know, 20, 21, going to clubs, we was like, this is all y'all doing? You know, just drinking and holding up drinks, you know. We were still dancing to bands, live bands, and dancing to, you know, the hip hop that was new. If you remember back then, almost every club, almost every record was almost a new record. So it went along with the fascination of being in that experience. So that was the landscape of a very fruitful creative marketing. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So under that same landscape, let's take you guys. You know, you're not from here. You're coming to go to school, right? You come into this whole mecca of blackness, of black experience. What was it like to come to Atlanta, to breathe that air, that artistic air that Jason said was already existing? And how did it touch you? How did you feel that? And how did it touch you? What was your experience like? John.
I think with Atlanta, to me, it was going to, I was more on South Florida down, and the AU Center, people fail to realize that Atlanta is not only Atlanta is a college town, it's a black college town. So you have four HBCUs, Morehouse, Clark University, and Morris Brown. And then the graduate level stuff, ITC, Atlanta University, and so forth. But every year you would have maybe 2,000, about 2,000 kids from all over the universe converging on one in Atlanta. And when I came down, this is when everything was still kind of a regional thing. So, you know, you had the DC kids with go-go, you had the techno with Detroit, you had house in Chicago, hip-hop in New York, California was on their thing and stuff. Like I first found out about Too Short when I was hanging up with some guys from San Francisco, and they playing, you know, Too Short in the car. And it was just interesting that every year, these kids was coming down here, and then like Thanksgiving, Christmas, I mean, and also we didn't have social media, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Facebook, but we had tapes. And we would go, yo, let me get that BMX tape from Chicago, let me get that DVD from California, let me get so-and-so from Detroit, let me get the go-go tapes, yeah, here's some hip hop from Red Alert and Mr. Magic, and I got some videotapes too from Ralph McDaniel's Video Music Box, and that's how so when we all went back to our respective places, we were like, yeah, this is what we captured Chicago's onto, this is what we captured Atlanta's onto this is captured so-and-so, and I saw something like definitely was bubbling here, and I was like, okay, this thing is something to happen. I can't quite put my finger on it, but this is something special here, you know. And voila, it erupted, it blew up, and now we're here.
So, Esseen, so your experience, you know, we have this melting pot. We're getting all of these various tapes, right? Because we're only used to what we're used to. We might be listening to X, Y, and Z, but we're seeing this sea of blackness. We're seeing all this powerful opportunity. We're surrounded. I don't know if y'all been to the AUC, but I know as a young person, going to the AUC and being surrounded by your peers, people that look like you, people that are brilliant like you, right? And then the underbelly of that is the cultural movement that people are bringing with them. What was that like?
It's very, first of all, thank you, Kemi. Thank you, all of the contributors to the Cultural Alchemy Launch, and all of you for being here. This is an auspicious occasion. But in reference to your question, Kemi, I could say it's indescribable, but I'm going to describe it.
Mhm.
We used to, in our college days, sit at the corner of Fair and Brawley Street, which was where the Clark Atlanta U, Morehouse and Morris Brown and Spelman students would all meet to socialize. A few of us used to say, day in and day after day, there is no other place like this in the world. We said it confidently. And we hadn't been all over the world, but we just felt that. There's an incredible how would I put this? Cross integration of cultural reference point and interest in a Black context that was super powerful. Every single day, we felt this regenerative energy, and it came out in our expression when we partied, when we had discussions and debates, when we curated events. It was something that made us feel empowered, and it's one of the things that contributed to my desire to create this book, because the thing that I felt then and that I feel now is that connective and cooperative culture is what truly sustains and empowers us, and what will when we meet challenges. But in reference to your question, I'm speaking to my brother, Jason Orr, the other day, and something that I let him know is that with Funk Jazz Cafe, one of the things that it provided us with, because there were so many, as John described, musical interests coming from people coming from different places. But it was an interesting time in history because there was a reemergence in soul music and disco, and of course hip hop. But sampling in hip hop was at its peak at that time in the early 90s, late 80s. So people were becoming interested in older music. So what it did is it struck these Akashic chords, chords connecting to our collective and ancestral consciousness that made us move. Even if we weren't as familiar with the music, there was something within us that recognized it. And we all shared that energy. And with events like Funk Jazz Cafe, 90s R&B was super popular at the time, Uptown Records, Guy, Jodeci. But you had some of us who were looking for something a little bit more vintage, instrumental, and creative, and it made us say, well, where can we go for this? And Funk Jazz Cafe provided the outlet and the context for us to gather as lovers of music, but students of music. So what it did is it created a community for music disciples and students. That's how it felt.
I like that you said that, because this panel is called Connecting the Dots, and I'm moved to kind of take that back, because what's coming to me is that we didn't have any. I think we might have had MySpace that might have been popping off, but but before that we didn't have like it is now, right? But what we had was infrastructure. That was natural. We had all the record stores, right? We had Jamal on the radio. We had Ken Wild. We had the late great Ken Baby, right? We had this infrastructure, and we had all these different events that was popping off that you could go down any one rabbit hole and you're gonna get some more information, right? And let's talk a little bit about connecting those dots more. And go ahead. Did you want to add something?
Well, I was going to say, that is the one thing that definitely made Atlanta very unique. because like, if you were talking to people from LA or New York, London, they, they're like, how you don't know about this in Atlanta? Because we had an infrastructure in place that a lot of other smaller market cities did not have at the time.
Yes.
We had, like I said, we had retail, we had Earwax, Lions Den, Vibes Music and More, and Red Beans and Rice. Those were 4 black-owned independent record stores that was pushing and promoting the hip hop, reggae music, the quote-unquote acid jazz, neo soul at the time. So, when people were asked, oh, well, where can I find, I was at Howard Records, no, go check out these spots over here. After we had radio, RFG, WCLK, we had the events like Jazz Cafe, Second Saturday, Soul Sisters Juke Joint, And
So I want Jason also to speak to that infrastructure that was very unique, that also contributed to the canvas of what was actually happening. You got pockets over here, AU Center, you got these underground spaces, you got like house music, you got, all of these particular hubs, you got the whole poetry scene that's now, backed by bands, you know what I mean, right? And that whisper, that underground communication, speak to that.
Well, it's only underground because it's not supported by mainstream market. You know what I mean? For what I did, like I said, it went a quarter of a century, that's 25, 30 years, without that type of machine support, right? And so that market or community here, I always kind of was proud of the fact that this audience was the unmarketed to audience. They were not spoken to, nor were they marketed. You know what I mean? It was almost an era of consumerism where they was like, well, we're going to skip them, go straight to people younger than them. Whereas we were the young people that was making all the things happen. Almost still kind of, still, right? So to what John and Esseen said, especially, I put it in the movie, in the Punk Jazz Cafe Diary Decade, how important non-commercial radio stations in Atlanta was. You have a non-commercial station with Georgia Tech, WRK, you had free radio, WRG, as I mentioned, you had WCLK, a black radio station on the black campus. Even within their structure, they're trying to make people realize that, this is a jewel within HBCUs and Album 88. There were 4 of them, but their logos in the movie, so that people could see and identify them. So you had that, and then you have free press, printed press. Today, paper and ink, we barely see a creative logo.
Yes.
You go, I was in New York last week, I couldn't find the Village Voice. Wow. In DC city papers. It's just these things were relics of the past. But we took full advantage of them. And fortunately, at those papers, we also had another photographer, Sheila Turner. They had a paper called Swing Low. Just bad black folk, you know what I mean? That's like, if you won't get my message out, we gonna find a way to get this message out. That's the most important thing of that late 80s, early 90s that was happening in Atlanta. In the jazz community, there was a thing called Jazz Forum before y'all got here. People who actually, come together and print up their own stuff. At any point, you can go into Tower Records and somebody will have a newsletter on a one sheet. I even started that so that you can kind of talk about everybody in a particular community, right? So that was the great thing about it.
There was also, the connecting the dots, the birth of like, when we did get technology, like newsletters, right? And yeah, it's a lost form of like being resourceful, Kimberly Stewart Lucas, and different ways we got the messages out. So again, connecting the dots. What was the next pack, right? I mean, we're always on the map. We're always this underbelly of this burgeoning scene that's happening. What was the next major pop? John, I'll let you answer that first.
The next major. Would it be Dungeon Family without cats? Would that be the rest? Rest development, right? So you have the rest development. You have the face bubbling up, the TLC and Tony Braxton and so forth. Later on, Outkast.
That whole movement.
Yeah. Thank you. Who said social good? Thank you. Yeah.
Music,
Yeah.
and soul music, right? You know, also out of those scenes at the colleges, Jiva, India Reed, right? Freddie Luster, you know, all of that.
Freddie Luster with Backwater Productions and the
Mhm.
stuff that he was bringing that helped kick off and inspire. Will G and Chocolate Soul at Yin Yang with Lil Jon and the Chronicles. That was every Thursday night at Yin Yang. And, you know, well, I was just saying, you know, it's,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
On the record, that's like, oh, they came.
Christine, I'm gonna pass it over to you. What are your
And
thoughts?
Elevation with Kimbo and stuff that he was doing also. And, yeah. Well, Yin Yang period, that's a whole other conversation.
That's what I want to throw over to King Esseen. What was your experience walking into Yin Yang Cafe? Anybody know Yin Yang Cafe? Raise your hand, down a little clap and clap. Okay. Yes.
The feeling walking into Yin Yang Cafe for me was the same feeling as walking into the other events. It was family. See, the word that came to mind when you asked about what it was, what this special thing was that actually kept us moving and organized as we had community. The reality is there was no, until the mid to late 90s, there was no social media. We called each other. We did direct marketing. We used flyers. We met at record stores. This is what we did, and we met at parties. It was a great excuse to meet. But this is where the question about the next pop, for me, gets a little tricky because we all want success and recognition. And we were all happy for members of our community, like the ones we were just mentioning, to get to the next level. The only problem is, once you have corporate interests, it fractures community. Everyone that we were mentioning earlier, Arrested Development, TLC, Organizer, we all partied together. As diverse as we were, we partied together. And it's because, connecting the dots, we all had similar interests. You might have sung R&B, but you loved hip hop, you loved house. You might have played rock and roll, but you were supportive of the hip hop community, the house community, and they would support events like Rock Lockdown. We supported each other. We had community because we had each other. Challenging thing that comes with our cultural history is that we've done a lot with scarcity, but scarcity creates a mentality where it's easy to lure us away from community. And that is where I think a lot of things became problematic, because once members of our community went industry, we diverged. And then when our needs as a community needed to be fulfilled, it was harder to get our more successful artists to give back to the community because they were busy. They had a whole new experience that they were trying to reconcile. You know, how do I handle success? How do I handle people asking me for things and looking at me differently than when I was just a regular guy or regular girl? So it became, from my perspective, necessary for us to be very intentional about being organized as a community and being intentional about sharing resources, communicating. Social media now, there's a lot of funny things about social media, but the one thing about it is we've been in a space that we couldn't imagine when there was no social media, which is being able to find pretty much anyone and communicate instantaneously. So I I say all that to say, as great as it was for us getting to the next level, it also challenged us in a lot of ways. But we're up to the challenge. We can use what we have access to, and we can use what's offered to us to reinvest in us because it's so necessary right now. The more connected we become through things like social media and technology, the more isolated we become. And that's got to change.
So Jason, I want you to just kind of chime in on what you feel that next, major shift was that took us from, we still underground, right? But what was that next shift in the spirit of music that you feel that happened here in Atlanta?
After what?
Like after the period of the colleges, we got the record stores, we got this whole integration of this infrastructure that we have. We got music being played on the radio, soul music, neo soul is happening. Dallas, Austin, and the crew is happening. What was the next in your mind, in your viewpoint? The next major shift that kind of took Atlanta to another little notch in space.
TV and media, TV shows, Housewives, Bad Girls Club, Love and Hip Hop. Because a whole other fraction came to be a part of the consumer base, the nightlife. Today we have a whole department of government called the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Entertainment. Because there's so many things in terms of guidelines that people need to follow in terms of maintaining a healthy nightlife. So the next thing that, like I said, I think TV media, this is after Arrested Development, after Dungeon Family Outcast, there's things that's bringing a lot of light to the city. In terms of events, our smaller contributions, whether it be Chocolate Soul, or Jazz Cafe, or House in the Park. House in the Park is kind of like, a more natural freaknik. That's like a natural freaknik, right? Yeah, technically that's what it is. As the event producer, when I look at it, I'd be like, well, everybody, they made a movie of it. Well, it's in the spirit of what Freaknik started out with. For anybody that was here in the 80s that went to it, it was pretty much, I could say Freaknik was done in 89. You know what I'm saying? Because after that, or in 91, once Bill Campbell blocked off the streets, it was like, okay, well, we know of Freaknik, people jumping out the car and freaking anywhere, and we were like, look at that black folk. Well, we just do shit anyway. That is what the world saw. And they know that as Freaknik, and made a movie on it in 1994 that the Freaknik was kind of.
The backstory is that was the reason why people was driving in the streets freaking, because like Bill Campbell blocked the streets off. They took all the permits away from the park, and of course, the old Commons track. They can't stop all of us from just showing up. Everybody showed up at my Park, 12 o'clock. And what was that, 95? What was like, if you look north, south, east, west, all the way down Ponce de Leon, all you saw was blackbirds. I call it the revolution that didn't happen.
Doing nothing.
Yeah.
Going nowhere.
Supposedly we brought $1 billion into the city for that.
And then you got a lot of brands like Freaknik with a C, Freaknik with a K, Freaknik, Freak Fest, and Freak Fest. Right. So, with all of these things, people are seeing Atlanta as a cultural hub internationally. And don't forget, Maynard Jackson, when he was turning this city from the black, from the racist capital of the South into an international city, a part of that was his policy of having a healthy and strong cultural arts program. Thus, he created the World Cultural Affairs. We live in a city now where there's almost a mural on every corner, and the artist got paid for it. You know what I'm saying? I often wonder from doing, being a producer on his documentary, what would he think now? Just drive around this mud. You know what I'm saying? You know, when I was little, there were no skyscrapers in Atlanta, not one, you know. And here, we're talking about the cultural art scene. So that also gives you a different perspective. You're seeing buildings going up too. That whole, yes, I can, you know, create a music festival without announcing the talent and 4,000 people will show up. Yes, I can. Who said I couldn't, right? So that's because the city was growing. I'm seeing it grow. And then I can go talk to an individual that might be able to be pivotal in helping me get a permit or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And when cats see you with the right passion and determination, somebody's gonna help you.
Yes.
Maynard Jackson helped me, you know, and it was no bullshit. You know, he'd lean into your face and say, Jason, what do you need? I'm like, damn. That's like a Masonic question, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, I need a break, I need a girlfriend, I need a vacation. You know, he's gonna know exactly where I am based on how I answer him. So that told me I need to kind of bring the idea to the frontal lobe, not just play with it. You know, I'm gonna do another thing. Hopefully it'll be good. No, we're gonna do this thing. It's gonna rock because I also know the climate of the people, what's here. I seen what Dallas did. I seen what JB did. I see what's happening over there in the dungeon. They ain't even out the dungeon yet, but they're making noise. And prior to that, I was telling you earlier, I would talk to Ray Bird before we was even big. And be like, man, y'all mugs gonna get, y'all might mess around and be famous. I'm back in the 90s, be like, y'all famous. And now today, I'm in Stankonia a couple months ago, I said, yo, y'all need to be taking a picture of Ray's setup. They was like, wow, OG, the young boys in there, wow, OG. I said, because this man got the best-selling female group of all time, not the Supremes, not Destiny's Child, TLC. He's got the best-selling rap group of all time. Not Run DMC, not Public Enemy, Outkast. It's like, see, but y'all in Atlanta don't realize that you're around the best motherfuckers in the world. For real. Not in Georgia, Brooke County, Atlanta, the actual
It's
planet.
still reverberating, like the things that were happening in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, is the foundation that built the Atlanta that you see now. Like the infrastructure, not the infrastructure, but the arts ecosystem was largely based on what was happening in the grassroots community. And we look at it now, it's changed and expanded and, you know, flipped and all of the things. And I'm wondering, like, right now, and this will be our last question for each of you. When we think about the Atlanta arts community, the indelible imprint that we have made, what we see now, how things are growing in the community, how do we meet that call now? What do we do differently? And where do we go from here?
I said earlier, we need to be more intentional and strategic about where we're going, where we're headed, what we want, as opposed to being reactionary when things happen. I'll never forget Janelle Monáe and the Wildlife Society had a Wonderland Society had a gathering at their home, and it was for all the independent artists at the time. This was probably the 2010s. And my brother Soul Messiah was invited, and I pretty much invited myself, like, I'm going to that. So when I got there, it was a wonderful thing because they had the, you know, meet and greet section where you pick a name out of a hat. I was fortunate enough to have Janelle. And it was just very positive and very family. But after the introduction, I looked in the room and we talked about the importance of community, but we left out the next step. Like, okay, what are we about to do in this room, 50 of us in here. 50 of us can put $50 together and invest in something or invest in each other. We can all very intentionally buy her record this week, his record next week, their record the week after, and then take some of the money that we gain from collectively buying each other's records and buy the next person's records and create that sort of economic flow that's necessary in a community that desires to sustain itself. But we have to be aware enough to understand the importance of circulation of dollars and powernomics and not being dependent, being actually independent and networking and creating partnerships, but not being dependent on corporations and things of that nature. For us to get to the next level, we're going to have to see the importance and the power within the grassroots community. That's how I.
Where do we go from here? Keep doing it, keep creating, keep producing. I mean, people are looking at us. We've got the Housewives, we've got Love and Hip Hop, we got all that going on, and we also got the social media. Everybody wants to be a superstar, social media, and all that. But people are looking for us. So, a funny story. I remember when I was in Miami for the Winter Music Conference, and hanging out with some friends talking, and this is back when I used to carry prints and pictures. So I was like, well, here's some pictures, and people looking. They're like, okay, I've been to Atlanta. Where are these folks at? Who are these people? I said, oh, what do you mean? No, I couldn't find, and these are people from, again, New York, LA, from all over the cultural world. They're like, where are these people? So yeah, people looking at us, they're looking for us. So we gotta keep producing, keep putting stuff out there, and scream from the mountaintops, hey, I'm from Atlanta. And this is what we doing. Oh, this is Friday. This Tuesday, yeah, Oh, that's Jason Lord, yeah, Jay might, and with Jason might have Erica Badu with him, or might have a Dan Hunt, or, Omar, whoever, just, they're like, oh, so. Yes. So, yeah, it's Atlanta. So like I said, keep pushing on, that's all. Just keep pushing on, keep producing, keep creating.
I would say what's always been important for building a vibrant cultural arts community is one, respect yourself and really be grateful for whatever your talent is so that you can appreciate someone else's talent, what they're doing. For me, a guy who can see a whole bunch of talents in different artistic disciplines, you have to kind of set your perception of others. One, I'm comfortable in what I can create. This is what I mean. I'm comfortable in what I can create, but whether someone can do something, I'm looking for people that can do different things than from what I can do. And I will respect you so much that you know how to do that. And I may know how to do it a little bit, but I'm gonna take your leadership on it. And so when you empower one person and then another one and another one, and they end up leading you. I'm in that period now where a lot of guys I was like, how did you all under the leadership of a 23-year-old? And it was like, bro, we believed in you. It was your passion. It was how you could organize, and you would put things together on paper, and you would give us all instructions. And I said, also, I was blessed with other individuals that I was telling them how much I respected their craft. And they would come and perform, whether they were shy about it or not, it would give them the confidence to do so. A lot of those performances that y'all saw for the first time of those people, I didn't even know that might have been their first performance of doing that type of stuff. And it was just me giving them the confidence to say, well, let me set you up. So going forward, we need more people like that. We need people who can understand that if you have a gift, that your gift, if you contribute to a community, may lift all ships. High tides lift all ships, right? I always believed in that. Like, we can all lift this up, and you're only at 10%, you at 20%, I'm at 10%, but we got 30. right? We're gonna lift that up. So as a community, I have full faith and belief in that because we've done that, right? So to move forward, we have to continue to do that, but it starts with, as you get older, you start disrespecting people and their gift. So that's how I say, we remind everyone, like, let's bring that down a little bit and respect the gifts of others because they are a part of you. You're one finger on the hand and they're a finger. And together we can pick things up, move things around. If you truly believe that, trust me again, things can change. And that's
Well,
probably one of the only ways.
In that same, in that, and tie all this, attempt to tie all of this up, you know, everything that you all have said and we've said on this panel as it relates to the climate that we're in now, right? Tapping into our cultural alchemy, tapping into our alchemy as Black folk, right? As healers, as spiritual beings having a human experience, right? Being able to tap into what Esseen has, you know, eclectically shared, which is cooperative economics. How do we support one another? You know, Graham said, we don't need each other. And right now, you know, how do we trust each other more? You know, how do we really support and uplift and encourage and empower each other? Like within the arts, within our own families, you know, it is truly a time where we have immense opportunity while all that's going on is a layer of things that are going on is very much so, you know, affecting people, right? And on a spiritual level, for those of us that know, it could be it looked at as a huge distraction. And in that distraction, we have an opportunity to heal. We have an opportunity to witness what's coming up. We have an opportunity to create some generational wealth, right? Follow the money. Really, you know, we talk about creating these monies, right? But also in this climate right now, being able to take care of home first. What do they say? God first, right? Me next, then my family, then community, right? We're talking about community, but also there's an element of responsibility that we have within our own selves, right? And this climate has provided us this opportunity to tap into, oh, dang, that's scary, or whatever that is, right? Or something that is really bubbling underneath the surface in our own personal lives, right? You know, that's how we make room. You know, that's how we make room. And the arts, music, and culture is such a powerful vessel and container. You know, Harry Belafonte said that, you know, it is our responsibility, you know, to invite folks into the artistic experience, right? That we are the soothsayers of it all, he said, you know? So how do we bring, you know, all of us and all of this into context of community and really do something different, right? And sometimes it's for the first time that we're really, really doing something different, that we're really connecting the dots within ourselves and how that connects to music, art, and culture, how that connects to that same music, art, and culture that gives us, you know, just if it's a bit of ease, if it's a bit of woosah, it's a bit of tears, whatever that is, it's a bit of grief. You know, allow that to be that salve, right? That gets us to the next chapter, the next level. That's what connecting the dots are about. That's what our collective cultural alchemy is about. So I invite you to continue to enjoy this day. Continue to immerse yourself in this alchemy. Continue to sit within these panels. Continue to move your bodies, right? Continue to nourish your bodies so that we can open up ourselves as vessels and we can put something in, such as this music, art, and culture that can really help us to thrive. Again, my name is Kemi Bennings. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm joined by Jason Orr, John Crooms, and King Esseen. Please make sure in the spirit of cooperative economics, order your books online, okay? John Crooms, look at his work online as well. He also has a book. Be on the lookout for all that's coming out of this artistic genius of Jason Orr, and let's continue to support each other. Yes? Everybody say, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Meet someone that you don't know. Before you leave here, just introduce yourself to someone you don't know. Hug them and tell them everything's gonna be all right. All right? All right. Thank you so much.